disclaimer. So I have to say before starting that doing a video on a subject in Northern Ireland will likely upset some or all of you. I'm not going into politics, even though today we will do a little bit of history. Some background on me. Part of my family actually come from the Republic of Ireland, not far from the border in sunny Sligo. And most of my family on that side are Catholic. I was bizarrely christened Protestant due to my English dad, even though my mum and nan are Catholic. Personally, I'm a convinced Quaker, and to make things even more confusing in terms of my family history, my great-uncle actually fought during the Easter Rising in Northen Ireland. His brother, basically my great-granddad at the time, was serving, like many Irishmen at the time, in the British Army. On my father's side, I am English, but as far as I've been able to go back, my ancestry is rather uninteresting in that everyone on that side was poor and grew up and died around the Elephant and Castle, all the way back as far as I've been able to trace to the 1680s. I will mention a city whose name is controversial, that is of Derry, Londonderry. Whichever name I choose will offend someone, so maybe I should just call it Doralondane, just to piss everyone off. I'll probably just use Derry for ease of use. Anyway, that awfully written disclaimer out of the way. TLDR, please don't hate me for any faux pas with the troubles and the political situation in Northern Ireland. I'm just here to tiz them out over the trains. The scene. So this is the Derry to Belfast line. It's a main line between Northern Ireland's two biggest cities. The route runs on Irish gauge tracks. The gauge is shared with the Republic, thus interoperability is possible, albeit units used for cross-border services have to have two different types of signalling systems installed, as the Northern Ireland trains use British standard of AWS and TPWS, and the Republic uses a pretty cool enhancement of AWS called Continuous Automatic Warning System, which uses codes in the track to update the driver of any signal stepping up. This is quite similar to what's used in some parts of America. However, all these differences will be washed away when the whole of Ireland is united under the railway god of ETCS, which apparently will start rolling out into the 2030s and will mean that all the trains will be running on basically the same signalling system. So the line runs as a double track for parts and as a single line for others with passing loops. Our story today looks at a single line section in a place called Downhill. It lurks between Derry and Coleraine, running along the coast. It looks absolutely beautiful, and I'd really like to go there one day. I've only been to Northern Ireland once, and that was on a drive from Sligo to Dublin, and we thought we'd take a bit of a detour. The area is outlined by cliffs along the sea line, interspaced with beaches. The train line actually runs through the cliffs in a 500-metre long tunnel after leaving Castle Rock Station. The track has a PSR of 70 miles an hour with low restrictions for some sections, and is signalled using the token system, with network communications done via two-way high-frequency radio. This was in 2002. It wasn't intended for safety-critical information outside of potential troubles-related incidents. The trains that ply the route are the Class 80s. These are diesel-electric multiple units. They are powered by a diesel engine which generates electricity for the traction motors. They are derived from the Mark II British rail carriages used on the mainland and had slam doors, where passengers manually open and close the doors. So I think I've covered most of the background, which leads us on to the train crash. The disaster. It is 10:25 on the morning of the 4th of June 2002, and a free-car Class 80 service has set up from Belfast to Derry. It travels along the Derry-Londonderry line, stopping at its booked stops with no real issues. Upon reaching Derry, the train was readied for its return working under the head code of B Bravo 411. Side note, any Northern Irish rail workers out there, do you call it a head code or is it just a train running number? Anyway, it was to be worked as the 12:50 service back to Belfast. It departed and proceeded along the line as normal. It was scheduled to stop at Bellarina at 13:15. Meanwhile, at around 1:10, a passerby along the Bishop's Road near Downhill noticed some rubble on the ground that had apparently fallen from the nearby cliffs. They continued to look around at the rubble and discovered that some of it had fallen onto the railway, including a large boulder which was in the 5-foot permanent way. The member of public called the PSNI, which is the Police Service of Northern Ireland, Limavady Police Control Room. This was at around 1313. The boulder was estimated to be around 1 metre wide and 1 metre deep. Information was passed on to the Northern Irish Rail Control Room, who concluded that the obstruction must have been on the line around Downhill. The control room connected to the local signaller, who confirmed that the train in the area had departed past signal Charlie Kilo 336 and was on the single line, heading towards the obstruction, thus meaning there was no signalling protection that could have been put in place to stop the train. The controller at NIR attempted to make 2 general broadcasts in the hopes of reaching the train, but they did not get a response. There was no emergency broadcast feature of the two-way radio, like what we have today of GSMR. Thus, there was no real way to stop the train. Around this time, train Bravo 411 was approaching the curve near Downhill, running at a speed of 60 miles an hour. Quickly, the boulder came into view and the driver applied the emergency brake. A moment later, after emergency brakes were applied, the driver heard a loud bang, quickly followed by it rising up into the air. The train became derailed and crashed along the cess of the railway until the rear end of the unit came to a rest 129 metres from the point of impact, leaving this as the crash site. The train's guard called the Northern Irish Rail Controller on their personal phone and reported the derailment and subsequent crash. This was at around 24 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, after which they helped with assisting passengers off the stricken train. The passerby, who called the boulder in to 999, then went in to assist passengers on the crashed train. They helped remove the driver and administer first aid to them. This guy was the real hero of the day. All 24 people aboard the train were evacuated and not a single life was lost, which means police, ambulance and fire services would arrive on the scene shortly after to assist and triage the injured. Initially, the crash would be classed as a major incident, and PSNI had control over the crash site. The classification would be lowered to a local incident, and the police would release the site to NIR. Evidence from the scene was collected, and the train was inspected in situ for any obvious mechanical causes. The train was removed later on, and the line was reopened a few weeks later on the 24th of June 2002. Which leads us on to the investigation. Clearly, the main cause of the crash was the dislodged rocks. But how did it happen in the first place? Well, it was just cliffs doing what cliffs do, in that they are gradually falling apart. The investigators did note that the slopes weren't properly managed. The land's owner had allowed road service to maintain the slopes on his behalf to prevent road-related accidents, and he had contacted NIR prior to the accident for a similar arrangement, but they never responded. The journey out seemed uneventful, even the part travelling through the tunnel near Downhill. So clearly the rock failure had occurred between 12:07 and when the train passed the first time to the impact at 13:15. The rockfall was an inevitable incident, which means there should have been proper mitigation for this. So those initial looks at the train post-crash would pick up on a pretty important issue. The train radio was switched off. Testing found that the radio calls should and would have been picked up, even though reception along the line was known to be a bit problematic, leaving investigators to decide the radio was either off completely or on a low volume. The ultimate cause of the crash was issues with communications. The radio shouldn't have been able to be turned off or turned down. Modern GSMR radios in British trains only go off when the cab is switched off, or when the cab is live, the MCB related to it is tripped. Because as long as it can receive signal, the GSMR unit can still receive an emergency call, even if a head code isn't registered. The design of the carriages were also a concern, but it's hardly surprising, as by 2002 they were a rather antiquated design, based on trains built in the 1970s. The Class 80s replacements, the Class 3000, are much better apparently. So it's scale time. It's going to be a 2 on my scale, and this is what I've got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. This is a Plain Difficult production. All videos on the channel Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike licensed. Plain Difficult videos produced by me, John, in a currently mild corner of Southern London, UK. As always, I have to say is thank you very much for watching, and Mr. Music, play us out please.